Tamatha Paul.
Kia ora, Madam Speaker. Today I am going to be speaking on behalf of the Green Party and our views on these changes to our rental laws here in Aotearoa. And it's really important that this bill gets the attention that it needs, because at the end of the day it impacts more than 1 million people. There are more than estimated 1.2 million renters in this country, and these changes are going to impact so deeply because it gets at the fundamental basis on which we all rely on, which is the roof over our head. We all acknowledge if you don't have a solid roof over your head, if you can't return back home to your home every single day and know that you are safe and secure, then how are you supposed to do literally anything else in your life? Because that is the one thing that all of us need to be provided, and that's why it is provided for in international conventions that say human beings have a right to shelter, but actually we're trying to go further than that to say human beings have a right to safe, warm, affordable housing. So these changes are massive. And the kind of overarching point that I want to make on this bill is actually, I feel and we feel that these changes have actually, in a way, been paid for, because you look at the levels of donations that different government parties have had, and we've got those on the record. From 2021 to 2023, the National Party received over $1.3 million in donations from the property industry. The ACT Party received over $830,000 worth of donations from the property industry, and New Zealand First received over $300,000 worth of donations from the property industry. So what my sincere belief is, after going through the select committee process for this bill, is that the evidential basis for this bill is not there, and the support for this bill is not there, because 97% of submitters oppose this bill, 53% of landlords and property managers oppose this bill. Therefore, it does make you question, and I'm not making assumptions.
Just be careful.
I am walking the line
how
very
one's
clearly.
going to phrase this. I think the point's been made,
Yep.
and I think probably come back to the points in the bill.
Yes, will do,
Thank
Madam
you.
Speaker, but I just do want to highlight that it is reasonable for people to question how this bill came about when there isn't an evidential basis for it and when the submissions are very clearly opposed to this bill.
That's right.
So I wanted to make that point, because it is the belief of our party that these changes have been paid for. I'll move on now.
Point of order, Honourable Mark Patterson.
That's a very serious allegation. Could I just more fully formulate on that? We heard in the previous bill a speaker cast aspersions on political parties as well in terms of the motivation for bringing legislation forward, and I think that's unbecoming of the House.
On the first part of the point of order, the assertion was, or the allegation was not actually made. I stopped the member before the member got to the point of making that allegation. Just before I imagine Ingrid Leary's going to want to speak to the point of order, I also put that this member back on the bill when she stood up on behalf of a colleague with some information that has been publicly debated in this House, and then we went back to the bill. So on that particular occasion, yes, the member did say some things, but they had already been publicly debated in this House. So I call Tamatha Paul to continue her speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I'm going to move on to the other parts. Thankfully, this bill, there are a lot of different areas that we can talk about, so happy to move beyond that one, but it did need to be said. But thank you, Madam Speaker, for your understanding. Because this bill has been couched in fluff. It's been couched in fluff to try and hide the fact that the biggest, most detrimental impact that this bill will have are no-cause evictions. And as the point was made by my colleague, Kieran McAnulty, the Minister, when he was promoting this bill, he talked a lot about the pet provisions, and they're welcome. As a renter that has a dog, yep, those are welcome changes, because it is really hard to have a pet and to rent. But I actually wouldn't want those those additions if it meant that 1.2 million people will be potentially at risk of being kicked out of their homes for no good reason. And so all of these changes that are made to couch the real devastating impact and the devastating potential of this bill are simply not good enough. And that's why we won't be supporting this bill. And actually, my colleague, Francisco Hernandez, just made a really good comment. What it's giving is that the government doesn't want to stand on this bill and that they're actually ashamed of what they're doing because they know that no cause evictions is going to have a disastrous impact, as it has around the world. You look at the UK, where they've got this thing called no-fault evictions, which I understand to be the leading cause of homelessness in the UK. That was no-fault evictions that did that. And now we're trying to do the exact same thing because we're not trying to do anything unique here. No cause evictions is not unique. You look at developed countries around the world who have tried this out before and it has led to homelessness. And that's why we've been so staunch in our opposition against this bill, because we know what happens. We know what happens when things like no cause evictions are introduced. Because in reality, there are no tools for tenants to be able to fight it, because that is the insidious nature of no cause evictions, is that they don't need a reason to kick you out, and they will kick you out. And it renders renters absolutely powerless. Not to mention that we're not even going to go to the tenancy tribunal in the first place, because what resources does your typical renter have against their landlord, who has got money, who has got power, who has got the law on their side, and you're just a renter who has nothing to fight against that. So that is the insidious nature of the no cause evictions, and I do believe that the government is ashamed of their own policies, because that's why they've tried to couch it in all the fluffy stuff. I also want to talk briefly about the changes to domestic violence, and I know that this is a really sensitive topic, so I will try to approach it as sensitively as I can. But I want to say that these don't go far enough when the result of no cause evictions is that many people who are in extremely challenging situations in their living conditions will be put under further stress by no cause evictions. Because if you don't have housing security and you are going through a difficult experience such as domestic violence, then you are not going to want to leave your home situation, because you will be scared to not be able to find another rental. So yes, the changes that this bill makes around domestic violence are important, but also just take a minute to think about how much more pressure you will be putting on people and their personal situations when they are constantly living on the edge and unsure of whether they will even be able to stay in their homes or not. Now, I don't want to just talk about the bad, because we have got a range of amendments and suggestions to make this bill better, because if there's anything we can do to make this slightly better, we will do it, and we will be bringing these amendments to the committee of the whole stage, and I would really ask that other parties would consider the merits of these suggestions, because we think they're ones that could be accepted and that could get support around the House. Some of those suggestions are around clarifying the PET provisions a bit more, because it was clear through the Select Committee process that there was still a bit of confusion in the public, for example, whether disability dogs were classified within these provisions or not, and a whole range of other things that we explored in the Select Committee phase. So I would really ask that people consider these amendments and these changes, because they are doable. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to support this bill when the core aspect of it is so morally indefensible. And also, I think that the really frustrating thing with this bill is that the public has really been tried to be fed the story that justifies this bill. We've been told that these changes will allow for property managers and landlords to take a chance on riskier tenants. There's actually no evidence behind that, and I was actually really disappointed in the analysis and the robustness of the advice that we received on that bill in relation to that assumption, because there wasn't any evidence behind it. And this is not the first time that this government has passed a housing bill that doesn't have a strong evidential basis. With the interest deductibility work, we were told that this would drive down downward pressure on rents. We are yet to see any of the evidence that backs that up, and there was no evidence for that either. So we're being told all of these lines and marketed these beliefs that this is what we should accept. But if you actually look at the evidence, it doesn't back up those assumptions that are being sold to the public. And that's because this government treats policy and lawmaking like a marketing strategy. Briefly, I'll touch on what our solutions would look like to actually transform the rental sector that we would like to see and that we would be willing to work with the government on. We would love to see a rental warrant of fitness. This would drastically improve the quality of our rental housing, which we know overwhelmingly is damp, cold and mouldy. We would like to see rent controls that actually limit the amount of times that landlords and property managers can increase the rent and how much they can increase it by. And we would like to see more regulation of the property manager world, because we know that they are not regulated, they do not have rules, and we need to have those in place so that tenants' rights are respected and upheld. So that's our contributions, Madam Speaker. Thank you.